How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back again to the channel for another Roster Mania reaction video. I'd be lying to you if I said that I expected for us to be chatting about the subject that we are right now, but here we are, right? Here we are technically revisiting a subject that we have discussed previously, but it is very, very fascinating, the fact that we are talking about this and the timing of which that we are chatting about this. We have talked at length numerous times about the OPTIC'S Roster Mania conversation, right? The question has been, who will be OPTIC'S full lineup heading into Major 2? And we could have just received the biggest bit of news around it yet. That is right. I do want to highlight that this is reporting that was done from Ben J. Nassim's newest video. If you guys aren't already familiar with Ben, which I'm sure that you are, I will have a link to his video that we are talking about linked in the description. So I want to highlight that this is Ben's reporting. This is not mine. This is just me reacting to the news that he has put forth. You can absolutely go feel free to check that out. However, we will be chatting about what he discussed. So in his video, and this is an exact quote from what he discussed. According to multiple sources, there are still active conversations and negotiations going on between Seattle Surge and OPTIC'S for Pred. Another quote, deal not done, conversations are ongoing, but there is a level of confidence that the deal might get done. Now, before everybody starts freaking out, talk about how this could be a possibility again, I knew it, OPTIC Pred was supposed to happen. Not 100% confirmed that this is going to happen. It is reporting, it is speculation, and more important than anything, this reporting just may not even be accurate and very well may not even be true. That unless it is confirmed by the franchise on their social media, by the CDL, it is not confirmed that this will happen. The reporting very well may not be accurate, but I do feel a level of confidence to talk about what Ben has discussed. I feel like there is a level of accuracy potentially to this, so much so that I feel like it is important to make a video about. I wouldn't just make a random video about something that has no credibility whatsoever. We would not do that. But it is interesting that these two teams are the only rosters in the CDL right now who aren't scrimmaging, right? Every other team is in the works. They are playing. OPTIC'S and Seattle have not, right? We know obviously why OPTIC'S hasn't. They have been trying to make a roster change. So there is a reason for that. On the Seattle Surge side, I believe that Pred has actually been in Australia. So there's been a level of delay for them to start their scrimmages as well. So it is fascinating that the last two teams who are not scrimmaging very well could be involved in a deal of some sort. So my first reaction, right? My first reaction to the Pred to OPTIC'S rumors or information sources leaking, any of that stuff. My first reaction, honestly, was, okay, if Pred goes to OPTIC'S, does DASHY go to Seattle, right? What happens with DASHY in all of this? That has really been one of my biggest points of emphasis that I feel like people aren't chatting about enough. Is there a chance for a trade? You know, would DASHY go elsewhere? Is he going to stay on as a substitute? Like, what is going to happen with DASHY? And now in Ben's video, he never really talks about, in terms of this Seattle Surge dealing, if DASHY is on the table or not. That was never discussed. Is it a possibility? Of course it is. Everything is on the table possibly when it comes down to it. However, if it's not referenced, I'm assuming there is a less likely opportunity that that is the case. And if that is the case, right, if Pred goes to OPTIC'S, right, it would have to be OPTIC'S buying out his contract, all of that stuff. But if DASHY does not go to Seattle in return, this is an even bigger deal and a much better spot for OPTIC'S. Maybe not financially, but it is a much better situation for OPTIC'S than I feel like a lot of people will realize. DASHY's value after Major 2 will be exponentially higher. It absolutely will, right? Any team who could be or would be in the market right now for DASHY post Major 1 will have a bit of info or a lack of aggressiveness, considering the fact that we are just one event into the season, right? If you are a team who has high expectations, who expects big results, and you didn't perform at Major 1, you know what? Going for Dashy's a big move, right? At the start of the season, going for a piece like that, you can even look at, the reason why Optic Texas is dropping him. You start to consider all of the negatives and the penalties to possibly being aggressive. However, after Major 2, if you have not just one result, right? Because teams right now are saying, it's one event. We had one bad series that led to another. There was a recent meta change that happened coming into the event. There's a lot of things holding teams back from making big moves early. However, after Major 2, that, light switch, for example, quickly gets switched back on in terms of, okay, now that we know for a fact that we have more information to work off of, we have a better sample size of what our team is, teams will be making moves. Teams will be making moves after Major 2. And if it's the right roster, not only do I think that there will be interest in Dashy, I think that there will be a high level of interest in Dashy. Why does that matter? Because Optic Texas, if they just add Pred to the lineup, which is a huge move, they also have the opportunity to make another move if Dashy gets moved after Major 2, right? If Dashy does not go to Seattle Surge, there is a very high chance that teams will have interest in him as the season goes on, possibly after Major 2. And if that is the case, we could see a trade go down and another piece added to Optic Texas. So I do want to highlight that if this rumor is true, not only should you have a lot of confidence if you're an Optic Texas fan, because obviously you went after the big fish. It goes to show that Optic is very interested in going for arguably one of the best players in the entire CDL, maybe the best SMG in the league. But you also could have a chance to get a piece in return for Dashy. Now, who knows if that is the case, but it is a very high likelihood that something else could happen if they do end up adding Pred. Now, this deal to me does sound likely. It does, right? It does sound like the pieces do make sense. Things do line up according to what I've seen on social media, what I've seen in terms of the reactions from different people. And I will say this. I mean, if the rumors are around Hook were true, the fact that they haven't just instantly brought him into the team makes sense, right? Because if you are trying to go for Pred, then you don't sign Hook. So if there was legitimacy around the fact that Optic Texas was interested in Hook, however, he tweets out, I'm going to be going over to challengers now. I am a free agent. The fact that we didn't see the instant pickup by Optic Texas to add him onto their team leads me to believe that there is somebody else out there that they are valuing higher than Hook, and that very well could mean that there is a deal in the works for Pred. The information and the likelihood is not in there for me. I did hear Scump on stream earlier today, and I think this was actually clipped and tweeted out as well. But he did say on stream earlier today, as of the recording of this video, January 5th, whenever people were talking about him, like, hey, Scump, leak the roster, all of this. He did say that there's nothing to leak, right? He essentially said, guys, listen, there's nothing for me to leak right now. That indicates to me that also nothing is done yet, right? If there's legitimately nothing to leak, that means that there is not a current player that is signed on to the roster, that a deal is not done. And if you go back to the original comment, the original quote, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Now, there was also another bit of info that I thought was interesting. This came out today again, and this is from Crone, aka Intel CDL. And there was somebody who tweeted out, essentially talking about how, it seems like Scump and Hex are implying that the new player has already been acquired. Optic doesn't even know who they are getting, all of this stuff. But Crone ends up replying and says that actually they have been active the last few days trying to get someone. So whoever's saying they don't know who they're getting all week is basically right. They might know who they want, but as far as I know, they didn't officially have anyone yesterday. So there is another level of it that, if you're thinking of checking boxes, if you will, it sounds like source after source. It does make sense. There is a possibility that this could be in the works. Now, another thing as well is that there's been a lot of people who have been wondering, what is the level of interest from Optic Texas, right? Is there a high interest to try to go after the big fishes? Is it more of like, hey, let's try to, be aggressive, but maybe we're not going to go for the major players of the world. Maybe we're not going to try to go for the absolute top tier. And there also is a question of it, regardless of what Optic Texas wants to do, will a franchise allow for them to do it? right? I mean, just because Optic Texas says, hey, you know what? We want Celium. Atlanta FaZe is going to say, no, we have no interest in giving you our player. If you want to try to buy out his contract, be our guest. It's not going to happen. We're not going to give you the guy. So there is two pieces working in this is the level of interest, is the price worth it for Optic Texas, and will the franchise agree to it? And we will never know the secondary side of it, right? We will never know if said franchise is willing to let player go or if that is what holds things back. But there were so many people who said after I was talking so highly what I expected for Optic Texas to go after one of these big pieces was because if the rumors are true that they are showing interest in Arcees and Pred, they know how difficult it will be to get them. So if they are showing interest, it goes to show to me that they know that it is possible, right? Because why would you even show interest? Why would you even ask if you already know what the answer is going to be? And so that is the reason why I felt like I was kind of more on board with Pred and Arcees and, the other rumors that were out there, is because I'm like, you know what? Why would they try? Why would they try if they know what the answer is going to be? And historically, Optic Texas, if we're talking about buyouts, Optic Texas is an organization, right? They are a franchise that has been willing to go for big buyouts in the past. And you're thinking, wait, what are you talking about? Envy and Optic combined together to make Optic Texas. Envy was willing to make a huge investment for the other SMG that happens to be on this team named SHOTZZY, right? You've heard of him before, who had never played an official pro Call of Duty match ever, coming into obviously what would be his rookie season in MW 2019. And this has been reported. I'm not bringing up a number that, is sacred, that shouldn't be discussed. This is something that has been talked about. Envy was willing to buy out SHOTZZY, who, like I said, had lots of high expectations, but nobody had any idea how he was going to play. They were willing to pay $300,000 for SHOTZZY's buyout when he was a rookie and nobody knew how he was going to play. So the franchise, at least half of it in terms of Envy, they've been willing to make a move like this before. That is another reason why I was bringing up previously why I feel like this is a possibility for them to go after the big fishes. Not only are they Optic, not only do they have the name, not only is it Scump's last season, but if you do look at the franchise as a whole, keep in mind the Envy part of it, they have been willing to make major investments previously in players, and they went after a player who had no pro experience in Call of Duty. We obviously know what SHOTZZY, his record was in Halo, what he had done in that title, and the rest is history. And the positive is that the buyout worked, right? They went on to win a world championship. SHOTZZY is already one of the greatest players in the league ever since that he has arrived. Now, the funniest thing about all of this is that Pred is proven, right? You're not going after another rookie situation where, there's not a whole lot of a track record behind this guy. No, Pred was the rookie of the year, arguably the best SMG in Vanguard, looks to be one of the best SMGs in the world again, if not the best SMG in the game, one of the best players in the world right now. So not only do you have a track record of doing it, but you were willing to do it for the other SMG, the guy that you're looking to pair Pred with. You've already done it for this guy. So are you willing to do it again, however, for a player that is proven, that is right now one of the best players in the world? Undoubtedly, to me, I would say that there would be a level of interest. And if there is interest, which again was reported at the start of all of this, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. Now, what happens if this deal does get done, right? What happens if we see Pred on Optic Texas? If, the day goes by, maybe by the time you've watched it, it's already started to occur. You see Pred, leaked in the lobbies. He's playing with Optic Texas. Maybe a tweet goes out. What happens if Pred ends up being on Optic Texas? Now, the first thing is roles, right? You're going to have to do a decent amount of working when it comes to the roles. A lot of people have been saying, what are they going to do? Because they're going to have 3 SMGs. Not anymore, right? Right now we sit in a 2 SMG, 2 AR meta. What's going to happen? Right now it would be SHOTZZY and Pred on the SMGs. Scump would upgrade from an SMG to a flex. He'd be running an AR for the first time in like a decade. I think we're going back to like MW3. where obviously in that game, in prior games, it was actually very much more AR heavy. Black Ops 1 was one of those titles. MW3 was the same. So Scump would be going to a flex running an AR for the first time in, like I said, a decade. And in his final season, he'd be revisiting one of the first roles that he ever held, having an AR in his hands. And I've mentioned this on numerous occasions as well. This would actually be, to me, the right move if you do look at strictly just Major 1, right? The tournament that happened in Raleigh at the Pro-Am. Scump and SHOTZZY, aggressiveness, pace was way off. SHOTZZY was number 1 in, I forget if it was in engagements or if it was just kills per 10 minutes. I want to say it was like damage. Essentially, SHOTZZY was at one of the highest levels in almost every category. And on some of these levels, Scump was dead last, behind some assault rifle players, etc. The pace could not have been more off between the two. I feel like this is a title where Scump does want to slow things down. So to me, this is the right move to make. I am personally a fan of the fact of going for an SMG player. So Scump would go to the flex, and then Illy, for I believe the first time, if not the first, full-time role when we talk about the CDL, being in a main AR position, or at least, full-time. I think he may have tried it a few different times previously, but regardless, he would be stepping into the main AR role. Obviously, there'd be a lot of questions around that. We've talked again about previously. We've chatted about a lot of this stuff, already, but there would be a situation where you'd have a feeling out period. Again, another reason why I feel like having DASHY is a very, very important thing, because you can go through Major 2, figure things out, right? Do we want to have Illy on an AR, right? Is this what we want to see? Can Scump maybe move to a main AR? I mean, that question feels odd, but we've seen it already happen with a player like Attach. He's seen massive success doing so. Maybe that would be the case. If they have confidence in Illy, then maybe they're willing to hand over DASHY. Maybe they hold on to DASHY in case there is an injury with Illy. Maybe if Illy does not work out, they can go and acquire another main AR piece. Maybe they go for a sub player. There's a lot of options that you have if you hold on to DASHY. And the best part about all of it is that you can test the roster that you have, and you have options to add to the team with a very valuable piece. Like, it feels like you are getting another very, very high value card to an already very stacked deck. So that is the positive if you're Optic Texas. Now, the biggest part about all of this, when we talk about the roster composition, is now going to be the SMGs. I mean, give me a break. Pred and SHOTZZY together. That's unreal. I mean, it's unreal to think about. The fact that these two guys could very well be on the map together. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this to me on paper, it's no question, at least in my eyes. Again, it feels like sometimes maybe I am willing to go ahead a little earlier than others, but in my opinion, on paper, this is without a doubt, without question, the most talented SMG duo on paper. And I think it has the potential to be one of the most talented, if not one of the best SMG duos ever. Now we could get into what that would mean, the previous SMG duos that have existed and seen so much success. I am just saying that SHOTZZY and Pred on the same team spells absolute success for the future if they are willing to be together and if they can manage to make it work. And if they will, Optic Texas will be in a fantastic position, at least when it comes to the SMGs. I mean, we will have zero question marks about the SMGs. It's going to be about the fact that you have Scump running a flex for the first time in a decade and Illy running a main AR for one of the first times that we've ever seen. So there is that to think about. And I will say lastly, as we close out this video, the expectations on Optic Texas would be at an all-time high if they managed to acquire Pred, right? I mean, it absolutely would be. The fact that you are able to get Pred, one of the best players in the league, somebody who has an unbelievable skill ceiling, somebody who, I mean, honestly, it was one of the best SMG performances in any title that I have ever seen. I'm not saying it's the best, but it is one of the best SMG performances in a title that I have seen in a decade plus of watching this game. Was Pred and his skill in Vanguard in the last half of the season. It was one of the most impressive, one of the most talented, one of the most mind-boggling performances that we've seen in COD ever. And you're telling me that Optic Texas gets that alongside of SHOTZZY. The expectations would be at an all-time high. And to me, it is no longer contest or bust. It is champs or bust if Optic Texas is able to make this move. Now, what happens to Seattle? That is totally up in the air. Again, I don't think that Ben actually talked about this, but there has been previous rumors, right, when Pred was, initially discussed, maybe be going to Optic Texas, that maybe Wardy, who is a substitute player right now for the New York Subliners, could be stepping in place, of him on Seattle Surge. There were a few other names that were listed. I think even Asim may have been from the London Royal Ravens. Who even knows if that's a possibility, because we're talking about, a totally different franchise, a starter even. So who knows what happens with Seattle? But obviously for them, it sounds like the easiest option will be to add in a player like Wardy, who I actually think is a great piece. Obviously for Seattle fans, I mean, anybody but Pred in terms of the SMG position feels like a downgrade. So that obviously wouldn't be the best. We don't know what's going on with DASHY, but it does not sound like he'd be going to Seattle in this deal. But I will say, if the deal does fall through, what does Optic Texas do next, right? What do they do if this does not happen, which is still a very high likelihood? I know we love to talk about, oh, well, what if this happens? What if this headline moves happens with this team? But what if it doesn't, right? What if Pred, Optic Texas doesn't happen? Seattle Surge go about their business. Optic Texas, what do you do? Now, is there a chance that they run it back? Yes, there is. Unfortunately, I feel like that would be a disaster. I feel like that would not work. Because I feel like every series would have a new level of pressure upon it. I personally think, with no intel, with no idea 100%, but just based off of what I think would happen, I think that Optic Texas are waiting to see what happens with Pred. If Pred does not work out, I think that they have Hook on the back burner just waiting. I do. I think that is what ends up happening. I think they bring in Hook. We've talked about that. You can feel free to check out the previous video that we have made talking about what would happen if Hook ended up joining Optic Texas. What would it mean for the team? How would they play? All of that stuff. I feel like there was a very high likelihood for it. Another thing could be if Optic Texas wants to take a look at challengers, right? Go for an SMG player there. Maybe they make a move on a substitute player. We've chatted about Beans previously. We've chatted about Wardy, but maybe Wardy, again, if it sounds like maybe Seattle could get him, maybe Optic Texas make a move for him. I highly doubt that New York has any future of making a quick roster change by any means off of the major victory that they had. So there is that, right? I do think that, if Optic Texas is not able to acquire the big piece, the things honestly do get kind of difficult. I mean, I think that getting Hook is not a bad move by any stretch of the imagination, but going for a starter, I just don't think works. Like I said, every team is starting to scrimmage. I mean, the time is beginning to run out. We've got new spawns. We've got a game that everybody's going to have to be eager to get back on. So I do feel like that if a trade does not happen with Pred, or rather if a move does not happen with Pred, that I don't think that there's another move with a starting player in the CDL that you can make until after Major 2. Now, do I think the deal happens? I feel like it does. I really do. I mean, from an outsider's point of view, everything doesn't even feel day to day. It honestly feels hour to hour. I think that there is a level to it. And I feel like if there is any legitimacy, like, this is the way that I look at it. If these rumors are true, and I'm choosing to believe that there are conversations going on between Optic Texas and Seattle for a number of different reasons that we've chatted upon, the fact that it seems to be consistent, many sources have come forward talking about this. If Seattle is having a conversation, that to me means that there is a percentage chance that they are willing to let Pred go. And I know there's a lot of people who are going to say there is no way that Seattle Surge let go of Pred. And I would agree with you, right? They're like, why? Now, we can get into that for a number of different reasons, financially, all these things. But regardless, if there is a percentage chance, if these conversations are going on, there is a level of interest that has to be expressed from the other side. And if I choose to believe it, then that means that figuratively, that Seattle would be involved in these. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I do feel like that it's possible. Again, it feels like right now at the current moment that I'm recording this, that it feels like it is likely, that it feels like it is possible. I just feel like, given all the noise, I feel like given this season, how important that it is for Optic Texas and the future of the franchise, the fact that honestly all 4 players are not guaranteed. I mean, even 3, right? We know that Scump's retiring. SHOTZZY was rumored to go to Atlanta FaZe. That was even talked about that, he decided to come back for Scump's final season. He was on his way to Atlanta. Illy, we don't really know what's going on with him and the injury. DASHY by no means is a future piece guaranteed for Optic Texas. So who do you have, right? So to me, the way that you unite all of this is by Optic Texas willing to go for somebody like Pred, adding him in and then working from there. and that is your future. That is what all of this is about, is the future of Optic Texas. I think that future is incredibly sacred. It's incredibly important to the franchise, and I think that they are willing to try to make a piece. So I think that for Optic, they're going to try to do everything possible. The only question marks that I personally have is on Seattle. Are they willing to? What does that mean for Surge moving forward if they do allow for Pred to go, all of that stuff? But that is going to do it. I know we've chatted about this for a while, but I know kind of my content more or less is like podcast. It's not by no means anything short form, but I really wanted to go in depth on this. Again, I want to highlight this is all speculation. There is a very high likelihood that not only does this not happen, but that this is not happening. So I do want to highlight that. I do want to make reference to the fact that this is not confirmed, that this has not happened. There has not been an announcement by the time of this recording, but I thought that it was interesting to go ahead and discuss it. It's been reported by what I believe to be a very reliable source. So with it already being out there, I felt like it was a fun subject to chat about and to discuss, because I would say that I'm not somebody who's going to invest or, whatever, but if I've got a scale, I'm putting a few more marbles on the Pred to Optic Texas chances. That is for sure. But let me know down in the comments, what is your thoughts, right? What would it mean if Pred goes to Optic Texas? Do you think that there is a possibility? Again, all this stuff that we've chatted about is stuff that you guys absolutely have the ability to chat about as well. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys again so much for supporting this video, for supporting the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys back again very soon. If you're looking for some more updates, I promise I will have them for you. Stay tuned, and I'll see you guys back here very soon.